Humanity's place within the Galactic Alliance had always felt precarious, like balancing on a razor's edge. They were the youngest member of the Alliance, and although they had brought their ingenuity and resilience, some species within the Council saw them as little more than unpredictable newcomers. For decades, the Alliance had been a shield against hostile powers, a coalition that humanity had trusted to help maintain peace. Yet, as shadows began to emerge within the Alliance's halls, humanity found itself questioning everything it believed. It started with a single faint signal intercepted from a distant relay station on the edge of Vorgoth space. Hidden beneath layers of encryption, it contained fragments of messages between high-ranking Alliance officials and the Vorgoth Empire, an empire notorious for its brutality and its fierce hatred of humanity. At first, the message seemed like a mistake, an unfiltered burst from a routine diplomatic channel. But as intelligence agents dissected the fragments, patterns began to surface, and each decrypted line revealed a chilling truth. A deal was in motion, and humanity's colonies were at its center. Across the briefing room, Earth's top ambassadors and intelligence officers stared at each other, struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. Commander Niles, head of Earth's Alliance Intelligence Division, gripped the edge of the table, his expression steely as he addressed the group. "They have been negotiating in the dark," he said, voice low and controlled, words dripping with anger. "They have given the Vorgoth free rein over our outer colonies, and they expect us to sit back and accept it." Among the shocked expressions, a quiet anger took root. Humanity's leaders knew the cost of war, knew the blood and sacrifice that came with each colony they had built. The outer colonies, though remote, represented generations of work, of human lives and dreams. To give them away like this, to a sworn enemy, was nothing short of betrayal. Earth's ambassador to the Alliance, Sarai Voss, spoke up, her voice seething with determination. "We confront them. We demand to know if this is true. They owe us answers." She knew the danger of confronting the Council, but humanity could not stand idle. The following day, Voss delivered her message in the vast council chamber, her words echoing across the cold, metallic walls as she outlined the evidence. The alien delegates watched her with varying expressions, some of surprise, others of impatience. She read every face, searching for a reaction, for some hint of guilt. Yet as she finished, Counselor Threx of the Ulther merely folded his hands and dismissed her claims as baseless, fabricated nonsense. When she pushed further, his tone turned cold. "The Council does not owe Earth any explanations," he said, waving her away as if she were a nuisance, and yet, in his eyes, she saw the flicker of something hidden: fear. As she left the chamber, her thoughts darkened. Humanity's position within the Alliance had always been fragile, but now it felt like they were standing on thin ice, with the Alliance ready to let them drown. Lima's IV was a small but thriving human colony on the outskirts of the galaxy, its people hardened by generations of survival on an isolated world. They had weathered hostile wildlife, unstable weather systems, and resource shortages, standing resilient despite the challenges. But nothing could have prepared them for what was coming. In the early hours of the colony's morning, sensors detected a series of energy spikes just beyond the system's edge. The colony's defense operators scrambled to make sense of the readings, their monitors flashing red with urgent warnings. At first, they hoped it was a malfunction, but as the readings intensified, panic began to set in. The Vorgoth had arrived. With blinding precision, the Vorgoth warships slipped past the colony's modest defenses and began their assault. The first strike hit the communication towers, severing all contact with Earth and the Alliance. The next barrage targeted the power grids, plunging entire sections of the colony into darkness. As buildings crumbled and fires erupted across the settlement, civilians scrambled for shelter. Yet the bombardment was relentless, leaving them no place to hide. Commander Vance, head of the colony's security force, tried to coordinate a defense, rallying his forces to protect the population centers. But his messages went unanswered. The Alliance's emergency channels remained silent, devoid of the reinforcements they'd expected. They were alone. From his command center, Vance could only watch as the colony's last defense turrets went dark, their systems overwhelmed. It felt like betrayal, raw and undeniable. The Alliance, their supposed allies, had abandoned them, leaving them defenseless against an unstoppable force. The reality struck with the weight of a hammer. They had been sacrificed. Far above, in the warship's cold interiors, the Vorgoth commanders watched the destruction unfold with ruthless efficiency. They had no interest in negotiation or surrender. This was a message to humanity, a demonstration of what awaited them now that the Alliance had forsaken their loyalty. By the time the sun rose over Lima's IV, the colony lay in ruins. Smoke and ash hung heavy in the sky, blanketing the once bustling city in a dark shroud. Of the thousands who had lived there, only a fraction survived, scattered and broken. The few who managed to send out distress signals described the aftermath in hollow voices, their words broadcast to any human channel within range. Their cries spoke of the Alliance's silence, their betrayal made public as the message spread across every human colony. Back on Earth, the news reached the Coalition Council in a wave of shock and anger. Videos of the destruction, shaky and filled with the screams of survivors, filled every screen. Civilians and military personnel alike watched with horror as their fellow humans recounted the tragedy, naming the Alliance as their betrayers. Anger turned to fury as humans realized the scope of the deception. The Alliance, in the name of peace, had sold them out, deeming their lives expendable. From the council chambers to the streets of Earth's cities, a powerful resolve began to grow. The time for allegiance had ended. Humanity would never be betrayed again, not by the Alliance, not by anyone. And if they had to stand alone, they would make sure the galaxy knew just how powerful that stand would be. The fallout from Lima's IV left humanity in a state of shock. The colony's destruction marked a grim turning point, and Earth was awash in grief and anger. People took to the streets, demanding answers, questioning how their so-called allies could allow such devastation. Public displays of rage filled the cities, with massive protests held outside the Galactic Alliance's embassies. The message was clear: humanity would no longer tolerate being treated as expendable. In the heart of Earth's Coalition Council, leaders and scientists gathered in tense meetings that stretched long into the night. Commander Niles, once a staunch advocate of the Alliance, now stood at the forefront of the Independence Initiative, a daring plan to sever humanity's ties to the Alliance once and for all. Humanity would chart its own path, even if that meant struggling alone against hostile forces. Yet with independence came severe consequences. Alliance sanctions struck fast, cutting off trade routes and withholding supplies that human colonies had long relied upon. Technology exchanges halted and vital resources dwindled. Earth's economy teetered on the brink, with shortages rippling across the colonies. In this time of desperation, the true depth of the Alliance's stranglehold became brutally clear. Undeterred, humanity shifted its focus, pouring every remaining resource into survival. Scientists and engineers, once assigned to Alliance research projects, were recalled to Earth to support a new mission, fortifying humanity's defenses and pushing their technology beyond the limitations they'd accepted for decades. Research stations that had once conducted peaceful experiments pivoted to develop advanced propulsion systems, shielding technology and weaponry that would make the colonies self-sufficient and secure. On the outskirts of Earth, an abandoned space dock transformed into a hive of activity, repurposed for the Coalition's top-secret project, the creation of a new fleet. These ships would be unlike anything humanity had built before, faster, stealthier, and stronger. engineers experimented with advanced alloys and energy systems that could rival or even surpass those of the Alliance's elite warships. Chief among their innovations was the prototype Shadow Veil, a cloaking technology designed to hide entire fleets from enemy scanners. It was an ambitious gamble, but one that could turn the tide. Humanity's best minds worked tirelessly, often sleeping at their stations and risking their lives testing experimental systems. Days turned to weeks, and against all odds, progress came. The first ship in the Shadow Fleet, the Dauntless, took shape in the dock, its sleek hull brimming with newly developed weaponry and stealth capabilities. Watching the ship take form, Commander Niles felt a surge of pride and determination. They were no longer the Alliance's subordinates, but survivors building the future on their own terms. Across Earth and the colonies, the news of the Shadow Fleet's progress spread like wildfire. Humanity, even under threat and betrayal, refused to be subdued. For the first time since the disaster on Lima's IV, there was a spark of hope. In darkened factories and isolated research stations, civilians and scientists alike found a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer simply rebuilding, they were rising, forging a legacy from the ashes. But with each step toward independence, humanity's defiance became a beacon visible across the galaxy. Other species, seeing humanity's resolve, whispered of similar betrayals and wondered if they too might stand apart. Tensions within the Alliance grew, with whispers that humanity's breakaway movement might inspire others to do the same. Humanity's message was becoming clear. They would stand alone, fortified by the scars of betrayal and determined to defend their freedom. And should any force come to challenge them again, the Shadow Fleet would be waiting. The newly christened Dauntless hung silently in the darkness of Outpost 6, a testament to humanity's unyielding drive to survive. Its sleek, angular design seemed to absorb light, an ominous silhouette against the stars. For months, Outpost 6 had been a hive of secretive activity, its purpose hidden from the Alliance's prying eyes. But now, the work of countless engineers, scientists, and military tacticians was coming to fruition. The Dauntless was only the first. Soon, a fleet of ships like it would patrol the far reaches of human space. Humanity was ready to face whatever threat dared cross their path. Inside the Dauntless, Chief Engineer Lena Torres surveyed the bridge with intense pride. The ship was equipped with technologies that defied the Alliance's limitations, each system designed to give humans the upper hand in battle. The heart of this innovation was the Shadow Veil, a stealth technology that allowed the ship to blend seamlessly into the vacuum of space, rendering it invisible to almost all known scanning technologies. For Lena and her team, the Shadow Veil was more than just an invention. It was a promise that humanity would never again be left vulnerable and defenseless. Commander Niles, now appointed to lead the Shadow Fleet project, watched as the Dauntless underwent its final tests. Its sleek hull bristled with experimental energy weapons, each one designed to hit hard and fast before vanishing. At the helm of this project, Niles felt the weight of the colony's hopes on his shoulders. With the Alliance growing wary and the Vorguth lurking on the borders of human space, the fleet had to be perfect. Failure was not an option. When the final systems check was complete, Niles gave the order, and the Dauntless slipped into the darkness, disappearing from sight. It moved like a phantom, gliding through space as if it were a shadow rather than a warship. From the control center in Outpost 6, Niles and his crew watched the monitors, tracking only faint hints of the Dauntless's position as it prowled along the perimeter. As it completed the test run and returned to the dock, a cheer erupted from the engineers and crew members who had poured their lives into making it a reality. The Dauntless had passed every test. The Shadow Fleet grew in secrecy, ship by ship. Each vessel was faster and deadlier than the last, blending human ingenuity with the hard-earned lessons of betrayal. Soon, word of humanity's mysterious ships began to spread across nearby systems. To the Alliance, the existence of the Shadow Fleet was an unsettling rumor. No one had seen the ships directly, but strange encounters and untraceable disruptions plagued the regions where humans had once relied on the Alliance's presence. Patrols went missing, supply lines were disrupted, and alien ships reported ghostly blips on their sensors before vanishing. As the fleet's numbers grew, so did humanity's confidence. The colonies, once isolated and vulnerable, began to feel the protection of the unseen force patrolling their space. Leaders from other species, once skeptical of humanity's departure from the Alliance, started to take notice. Some even whispered about seeking humanity's technology for their own defense, quietly admiring the power humanity had achieved through its defiance. But the true strength of the Shadow Fleet was not just in its ships or weapons. It was in the people who built it, who refused to be bowed by betrayal, who dared to create their own path in a galaxy that had once cast them aside. The fleet stood as a promise that humanity would no longer cower in the shadow of stronger powers. They would forge their own destiny and defend it fiercely. Humanity's colonies had come to know the distinct hum of the Dauntless and her sister ships as they patrolled the quiet expanse of space. The Shadow Fleet had become both a protective force and a symbol of human resolve, a shadowy presence that reassured distant colonies. The quiet was welcome but uneasy. Many knew it would only be a matter of time before their independence was tested. The reality struck one darkened morning, as incoming transmissions flooded the communications hub on Solara Prime, one of humanity's frontier colonies. The message was brief yet ominous. A Vorgoth armada was en route. Solara Prime's defense forces scrambled, broadcasting urgent requests for help across every available channel. Yet there was no expectation of assistance from the Alliance. Humanity had severed those ties with the scars of Lima's ivy still fresh. The Shadow Fleet was all that stood between the colony and the impending armada. As alarms blared through the corridors of Outpost 6, Commander Niles received the grim report. He knew the Vorgoth's methods well. They would use overwhelming force to terrorize and shatter any resistance. Yet this time, humanity was not the defenseless target the Vorgoth expected. With a calm, steely resolve, Niles ordered the fleet to mobilize, deploying 4 of their finest stealth destroyers led by the Dauntless herself. The ships cloaked immediately, slipping into the shadows, invisible to all but the most advanced scanning systems. The armada arrived within hours, dozens of Vorgoth warships emerging from hyperspace, their monstrous silhouettes casting an ominous shadow over the colony's horizon. The sight alone sent waves of panic through Solara Prime's population, but the Shadow Fleet remained hidden, a silent presence waiting to strike. As the Vorgoth ships advanced, communications intercepted from their command revealed their plan. Surround the colony, cut off all escape, then bombard the settlement until nothing remained. They were unaware of what lurked just beyond their sensors. Commander Niles gave the order. The Dauntless and her fleet launched their attack, emerging from the darkness like predators closing in on their prey. With precise coordination, the destroyers targeted the lead ships, focusing fire on the vulnerable engines and shields. The first Vorgoth cruiser erupted in a blinding explosion, caught off guard and unable to react. One by one, ships in the armada faltered under the relentless assault of unseen attackers, confusion breaking out among their ranks as their systems failed to pinpoint the location of the attackers. Inside the Dauntless, Niles monitored the battlefield, each move executed with ruthless precision. The fleet's stealth capabilities allowed them to hit hard and retreat before the Vorgoth ships could retaliate, turning the once overwhelming force into a panicked, disorganized fleet. In a daring maneuver, the Dauntless slipped past the outer ships and targeted the flagship's core, destabilizing its power source with a direct strike. As the flagship detonated, a wave of dread rippled through the remaining Vorgoth ships, and those not already crippled began a hasty retreat. The battle was over within hours, and the Shadow Fleet returned to their silent vigil, leaving the smoking wreckage of the Vorgoth armada adrift in the cold of space. Word of the victory spread across human space, a powerful reminder that humanity was no longer a helpless target. Solara Prime, once on the brink of annihilation, became a symbol of defiance. Across the galaxy, whispers of the battle began to circulate. For the first time, the Alliance and its allies realized the true extent of humanity's strength and independence. The Shadow Fleet was no longer a rumor, but a formidable force capable of withstanding the might of the galaxy's most feared powers. In that deadly welcome, humanity had sent a message to all who would threaten them. They would not bow, and they would not break. News of the Shadow Fleet's victory over the Vorgoth armada spread quickly through Alliance space, igniting fear and resentment among the Council's elite. Humanity's swift, decisive defense of Solara Prime had shattered their expectations, undermining the Council's authority and revealing a threat they could no longer ignore. Rumors of the Shadow Fleet's strength stirred unrest among other species in the Alliance. Whispers of resistance growing louder as smaller planets began to consider defying Council rule. To many, humanity's victory was a glimmer of hope. To the Council, it was an act of war, determined to end humanity's defiance. Before it inspired widespread rebellion, the Council convened a secret session, bringing together their most influential and ruthless leaders. Led by Councillor Threx of the Ulthair, the Council devised a plan to break the Shadow Fleet and destroy humanity's confidence once and for all. They would draw the fleet into a trap, staging an urgent distress signal from a nearby human colony and ambushing them with an elite strike force. The bait was set, carefully crafted to play on humanity's protective instincts. A distress signal emanated from Falron 9, a small but strategic mining outpost on the edge of human-controlled space. The signal was deliberately intermittent, as if the colony's communications had been damaged in an attack. The Council knew humanity would respond, mobilizing the Shadow Fleet to investigate. Commander Niles received the distress call while reviewing tactical plans at Outpost 6. The reports were unclear, suggesting an unknown fleet had breached Falron 9's defenses, cutting them off from all contact. Niles' instincts warned him something was off. The signal was too weak, too conveniently timed, but he couldn't ignore a colony in distress. After gathering his fleet commanders, he made the decision to proceed, leading a contingent of ships to Falron 9 with caution in his every move. As the Shadow Fleet entered the Falron 9 system, an eerie silence hung over the darkened colony. There were no signs of life, no signs of battle. The Dauntless scanned the surrounding space, picking up faint energy signatures, but finding nothing to confirm an attack. Niles felt his unease grow, and he ordered the fleet to maintain high alert. Then, without warning, the Council's trap sprang shut. From the void, dozens of warships dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the Shadow Fleet on all sides. Alliance battlecruisers, outfitted with newly developed counter-stealth technology, emerged from cloaked positions, their weapons locked on the Dauntless and its companions. Niles' command center lit up with alarms as enemy ships closed in, their weapon systems charging. He recognized the formation immediately. This was a strike force, one designed to crush the Shadow Fleet in a single brutal blow. Commander Niles acted quickly, issuing rapid orders as the Shadow Fleet adjusted formations, scattering to evade the ambush. The Dauntless darted forward, diving between the Council's ships, its advanced shielding absorbing hit after hit as it retaliated with calculated strikes. The other ships followed suit, engaging in tight maneuvers to evade the ambush. But the Alliance fleet was relentless, coordinated with brutal precision, their commanders driven by a cold determination to end humanity's rebellion. Niles knew they couldn't win this fight by force. He quickly devised a plan, ordering his ships to focus on a weak point in the Alliance's formation. If they could break through, they might escape the trap. The Dauntless led the charge, its weapons ripping through the outer defenses, creating a narrow path. One by one, the Shadow Fleet ships followed, dodging enemy fire as they punched through the opening. As the fleet broke free, Niles ordered a final strike, releasing a series of decoy drones that exploded, cloaking their escape. The Alliance ships fell back, regrouping in frustration as the Shadow Fleet vanished into the depths of space, leaving the Council's ambush in shambles. But the encounter was a sobering one. Humanity had narrowly escaped, their losses heavy. The Council's message was clear: they would stop at nothing to bring humanity back under control. Returning to Outpost 6, Commander Niles gathered his officers. They could no longer afford to simply defend their colonies. The Council had declared war, and humanity's path was now irrevocably set. They would need to strike back, to dismantle the Alliance's power and secure their future once and for all. The Council's ambush had left its mark on the Shadow Fleet, but it had also solidified humanity's resolve. The Council had declared war on humanity's independence, and Commander Niles knew they could no longer remain reactive, waiting for the next attack. They needed to strike back, to show the Alliance that humanity would not cower before their authority. Thus, Operation Dawnfire was born. Conceived in the heart of Outpost 6, Operation Dawnfire was humanity's first coordinated offensive. The objective was clear: infiltrate the Alliance's inner defenses, disrupt their command systems, and disable key installations, weakening their ability to coordinate attacks on human colonies. Niles and his officers meticulously planned each stage, choosing targets that would destabilize the Council's influence without causing unnecessary harm to civilian populations. They wanted the Alliance to know humanity's strength, not fear their intentions. To spearhead the operation, the Dauntless and a select group of the fleet's most advanced stealth vessels, each equipped with the Shadow Veil cloaking system, were chosen. These ships would strike from the shadows, bypassing heavily fortified areas to hit the heart of the Alliance's power structure. Months of preparation had gone into retrofitting each ship with enhanced cloaking fields, new shield emitters, and pulse disruptors designed to incapacitate enemy systems without causing long-lasting damage. Humanity wanted to send a message, not commit wholesale destruction. As the fleet approached their first target, a key relay station deep in Alliance space, the atmosphere aboard the Dauntless was tense but focused. Niles stood on the bridge, his officers poised and ready. With a quiet command, he ordered the fleet to activate the Shadow Veil. One by one, the ships vanished from sight, fading into the void as they began their approach. The relay station, a massive orbital structure bristling with communication arrays, was pivotal to the Alliance's operations. By disabling it, humanity could sow confusion, forcing the Alliance to operate in the dark. As the Dauntless drew near, its targeting systems honed in on the station's central control hub. Niles gave the order, and a series of precise pulse disruptors fired, each hitting its mark. The station's lights flickered, its systems stuttering as the disruptors took effect. Within moments, the entire station was offline, its communication channels silent. Without breaking formation, the fleet moved to their next target, an Alliance weapon manufacturing facility in a neighboring sector. Utilizing the same tactics, the Dauntless and her companions struck with precision and speed, disabling the facility's power grid and leaving it inoperative. One by one, critical installations across Alliance space fell to the Shadow Fleet's silent attacks, each strike coordinated and ruthless. Within days, chaos began to ripple through the Alliance. Command centers scrambled to restore communications, production lines stalled, and military coordinators found themselves unable to track movements within their own borders. Frustration grew among the Council's leaders, their carefully constructed web of control beginning to fray at the edges. In the Council's chambers, whispers turned to accusations. Who had underestimated humanity's resolve? Who was to blame for the vulnerability now exposed by these relentless attacks? Counselor Threx, who had orchestrated the trap on Falrun 9, found himself under scrutiny as his peers questioned his leadership. The Alliance, so used to controlling humanity, was now fighting an enemy it could not see. As Operation Dawnfire reached its conclusion, the Shadow Fleet returned to Outpost 6, victorious and intact. Niles debriefed his officers, each of them acutely aware of what their success signified. Humanity had proven they could take the fight to the Alliance, striking at its very core without losing their restraint or purpose. They were no longer just defending their colonies, they were reshaping their destiny. Back on Earth, news of the operation spread, igniting hope and pride among civilians and military alike. For the first time, humanity could envision a future free from the Alliance's oppressive influence, a future they could define on their own terms. The path to independence had been laid with careful precision, and now, for the first time, it felt within reach. The aftermath of Operation Dawnfire marked a pivotal moment in humanity's struggle for independence. The Shadow Fleet's precision strikes had crippled the Alliance's ability to wage war effectively, and for the first time in decades, humanity was no longer on the defensive. The colonies, once isolated and vulnerable, now felt the surge of newfound strength. The fear that had gripped them for so long began to recede, replaced by a rising confidence. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it was capable of far more than just surviving. It was capable of reshaping its own destiny. Commander Niles stood before a holographic map in the command center of Outpost 6, the fleet's home base. Around him, the senior officers of the Shadow Fleet discussed the next steps in their campaign. They had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Alliance's power structure, but they knew that this was just the beginning. The Council would not let go of their grip on humanity without a fight. However, the balance of power had shifted. Humanity no longer needed to fear their former masters. They now had the tools, the will, and the resolve to forge their own future. "Now we take the fight to them," Niles said, his voice steady. "It's time to break the Alliance's hold once and for all." The officers nodded, the weight of his words resonating deeply. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy, for the right to chart their own course. Humanity had already proven it could stand up to the might of the Alliance, but to secure lasting freedom, they would need to dismantle the core of that empire, piece by piece. But it wasn't just military might that would shape humanity's future. The colonies had started to work together in ways they never had before, pooling resources, knowledge, and expertise to create a truly independent civilization. New alliances began to form, not just within human space, but with sympathetic species who had watched humanity's rise and saw the possibility of a galaxy free from the Alliance's oppressive rule. The Shadow Fleet's victories had sparked a movement, a revolution of sorts, and other planets, hesitant at first, began to reach out. Humanity's message had reverberated across the galaxy. The age of the Alliance was over. The Shadow Fleet had become a symbol of resistance, not just for humans, but for any who wished to cast off the chains of a tyrannical regime. As Niles and his crew prepared for the next phase of their campaign, they also knew that there would be sacrifices. The Alliance would not yield easily, and many battles lay ahead. But they also understood that this was no longer just about fighting an external enemy. It was about building a new civilization, one that would never again bend the knee to anyone. The cost of freedom had already been paid in blood and betrayal, but humanity would never again be caught off guard. On Earth, the news of the fleet's success sparked celebrations, but also solemn reflection. The scars of Lima's IV and the losses suffered in their war for independence had not been forgotten. There was still much work to be done, but for the first time in human history, the future seemed open to possibilities. It was not dictated by any outside force, but shaped by the collective will of humanity. The galaxy had become a new frontier, not one dominated by the old powers, but one where humanity stood at the center, ready to explore, defend, and thrive on its own terms. The Shadow Fleet, now a symbol of human ingenuity and determination, would lead them into this new era, unbowed and undefeated. And so, with the Council reeling and the galaxy in flux, humanity set its sights on a future beyond the stars, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as free men and women, standing proudly and resolutely at the dawn of a new era.